Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Bridget, and I am the partnerships coordinator for 4Geeks. I officially started about 2 weeks ago, and I'm very excited to be here today with you all. And today we also have Janet from the 4Geeks team as well, and our special guest, Arsham. So, a little bit about 4Geeks. A we are licensed by the United States Department of Education, and we've been chosen as one of the top 35 boot camps in the world and the top coding boot camp in Miami, according to a association called SwitchUp. We've also been recognized as the top 10 coding boot camps in the United States, according to Newsweek. And today, as of right now, 4Geeks has about 7 campuses spread over the United States, Latin America, and Europe, and we count with 1,500 graduates, and we're really proud to have that many graduates and being spread all over the world. So our mission is to be contributors in reducing the unemployment rate and provide accessibility to tech and increase the amount of digital talent available while growing a strong and global community of software developers. With that being said, tonight we have our special guest, Arsham. He is the co founder and co CEO of Ribbon, which is a new professional social platform that leverages a blockchain based system to verify experiences and recognize achievements. So, is that correct, Arsham?
That's all correct. Yeah, thank you so much for the intro. Let me share my screen as well, and then I can kick things off.
Awesome.
Give me 1 second. Sorry.
May I add one more thing?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So, for anybody interested, or if this is the first time that students are joining this program and webinar, I will be dropping the syllabus for our programs that are offered in the chat, and you'll be able to look over what our course offerings are.
All right, I can kick it off. Thanks so much for the intro as well. So yeah, this just to give you some idea, a talk should be roughly like 20-ish minutes, and then we'd love to have a discussion at the end as well. If you have any questions, feel free to stop me also as we go. I want it to be kind of more like an open discussion, especially towards the end. And yeah, I'll kick it off from there. So what I want to talk about really the high level is where I think AI is today in relation to social networks, where I think it's going kind of in the short-term future, and what are the implications of that, and how is Ribbon really addressing that? So just to kick off, I want to give you a bit of context about who I am, just so we can have a better discussion, especially towards the end, and kind of how I got to this place in my software journey as well, and hopefully that's helpful to people who are kind of earlier in their software journey too. So I live in Toronto right now, but I'm actually from the UK. Lived in Toronto for the last 5 years or so. And I started off kind of at the very start of my career as a mechanical engineer. Wasn't too interested in software at the time, if I'm honest. Wasn't really interested in software engineering. Was more interested in kind of mechanical things, hands-on things. At the end of my degree, I was looking at lots of different things that I was interested in. One of them was just the whole area of biology. I got interested in this area called computational biology, which is really a marriage of AI and also biology. But again, wasn't too interested in like software at the time. Just wanted to work on interesting problems. And so I started to learn more and more about AI. Back then, AI wasn't really like as big as it is now. So it wasn't really a buzzword. And that's what really kicked off that whole area for me. So I ended up spending 5 years on a PhD in that area. And then at the end of that, wasn't really sure actually where I want to go. So I had some skills in AI. I'd written a bit of software kind of during the PhD, had a bit of, let's say, biological knowledge, wasn't sure what to do next. And after that, I feel really lucky that I actually got to work for a handful of companies, all at really different sizes. So first role ever was at a tiny company called QCO, where we worked as a team of three. So it was really tiny. Learned really just like how to work with other people initially. Learn about lots of different aspects that you learn from like small teams that you wouldn't usually get to touch. And what was interesting was that they actually didn't raise any investment. It was completely bootstrapped. So that was the first time that I ever really learned that was even possible for a company. Then worked for a company called Ezra, which had raised a lot of investment. I was an early employee that helped scale their machine learning team, where I went on to be the head of AI there. So learned really how the like investment world works there. Learned how like a venture-backed startup scales too. When I joined there initially, we were 5 employees. When I left, we were 60. So saw a lot of growth. And then after that, went over to Amazon, where I spent a bit of time leading one of their recommendations teams there. And that was a really different experience. Learned that I wasn't a huge fan of super large companies, but also learned kind of how they operate as well. When I was working at Ezra, that was where I met one of my friends and now my co-founder, Dave. And there, one of the things that we would always jam on, and an area that we really felt super passionately about was how much we loved using LinkedIn in the past, but how much worse the experience was getting, and kind of how we saw that happening actually to a lot of social networks. And so that was what really initially sparked what went on to become Ribbon. So we started Ribbon a little over a year ago, and now we're one of the fastest growing social professional networks in North America. This week we actually doubled in size, so we're going through a really interesting really interesting time period right now. And yeah, would love to connect with any of you on Ribbon at the end. I'll share the details, and hope this talk will be helpful. So let's just dive in. Kind of what is the state of AI and social media right now, and why do I think this is an interesting topic? So I think one thing that not everyone realizes is that already, if you're consuming social media, especially if it's being generated by, let's say, companies, like you're on Twitter and you follow a company account, you're on Instagram and you follow the like Coca-Cola account, for example, you're already probably consuming a lot of AI generated media. So we actually did a bit of a survey, asked a bunch of teams that we're in contact with, asked them if their social media teams use any kind of AI to generate any of their content, and the overwhelming majority of them already do. And so I think this is something that not everyone kind of outside our space is aware of. And so I think what's interesting there is it starts to ask the question kind of what is human generated versus what is AI generated, and kind of where is this going? So just to kind of look at what is the state of AI generated content today. So right now, usually within these like social media teams, as an example, what happens is you have a human who has the idea, has the spark, and they are driving a bunch of different AI tools, which are all helping them generate content. And so here's just a few examples. If you're on a social media team, let's take the Coca-Cola example. You might be using ChatGPT right now to generate some of the text of the Instagram posts that you're about to post. You might also use it to generate some of the like ideas for future posts. And then there are a bunch of new tools as well. So for example, one of them is called Playground AI, and this helps you generate images. And so the idea of AI generated images has been around for a long time. There have been aspects of Photoshop, for example, that have used machine learning or AI even 10 years ago. But what's really changed over the last year or so is now you can actually generate whole images or even a section of an image now using AI. And so there's not really like there's not a clear kind of original creator of this imagery. It's not always clear kind of where the different aspects came from. And so that's a really like interesting and growing area. And then this third kind of new emerging thing over the last 5 years is the idea of a fake profile. So really what a fake profile is on a social media platform is really just a collection of text and images that's been put together to make you think that there's a real person there. So we've seen this a lot. The two kind of social networks that I think have this the worst are Twitter and LinkedIn. And on these networks, for example, on Twitter, you'll often receive a DM, you'll often receive a message, and after a bit of investigation, you find out that actually a lot of the posts that this account have posted are not real. The AI generated, or if you look closely at the like profile picture, you also see the same thing. But if you look at kind of largely the state of how it works right now is that you have humans that are driving all of these AI tools, and there's almost always a human that is actually driving the intent at the top there. Now, where I think this is going is that in the near future, we are not going to have as many AI, we won't have as many humans, sorry, that are in this loop. So I think in the near future, what will happen is we'll have AIs that will receive some kind of initial instruction, and that might be create a social content calendar for the next month. And then the AI will actually go ahead and kind of generate the text, the imagery, all of that stuff, and create that on its own. And so really there'll only be one initial human driver of all that action, and there'll be less of a human in the loop. And I think what's interesting for us from I guess a Ribbon point of view, or even if you're someone who uses social media a lot, is that the line between whether something is real or fake is kind of blurring now. So it's not always clear when you see a post which aspects of this were AI generated. Was it a bot? Did they use AI tools to generate some of the images? And so I think those kind of questions are what we've been thinking about a lot. And in relation to Ribbon, really what we've been thinking about is how do we create a network that is resistant to all of these things, that in a world where you can kind of limitlessly generate all this text and imagery, all this other stuff, how can we create a social network where you still get value from the kinds of content that you see on that network? So I just want to dive a little bit in here into kind of how can we distinguish between human versus AI generated content, and where is that line, right? So I want to give two examples here, and I'll just elaborate a bit on why I think each example kind of demonstrates a little bit of a different point. So example one, let's say you're a new developer and using GitHub Copilot. So this is a tool that allows you to essentially either complete or suggest completion of code after you write a little bit. So here's an example here. I wrote a couple of lines, and then you see a suggested completion of that. So all the stuff in gray here is essentially AI generated. And so if I were to click enter on that, add that to our code base at Ribbon, now we would have some AI generated code in our code base. And so you might initially think, okay, it's not super clear who is the author of that then. If all this stuff in gray was actually not directly written by me, is there still an author? So with this example here, I would say, yes, there is still a clear author, just because there's a human there who is supervising over this, who was the initial driver of the action. And I think the intent there is clear. Someone would have eventually written that code anyway, but here we're using AI more as a tool to speed things up rather than to generate anything from scratch. All right, the next example here, and this actually happens a lot, and I think this example also surprises a lot of people. So if you're a user of Reddit, one of the problems they've had over the last couple of years that's getting worse and worse is that there are whole legions of bots that will be triggered by certain people who have an opinion point, and they want to push that opinion at scale. So one example I can give you is let's say you just create a new product, and you know that lots of people go to Reddit to look for reviews of that product. What's been found is in the past, certain like Amazon sellers, for example, will actually create a Reddit bot that will generate lots of reviews and comments that all look really positive, look like they're coming from lots of different people, but it's actually all being generated by a single bot. And so there's this huge problem on Reddit where you might even get like a single account that's now posting thousands of comments. And so here with this example, the question I'm asking is this kind of human-generated content? Because yes, there is a human somewhere who's actually triggering this, or is this like purely AI-generated content? And I think here it's a bit clearer. I would say this is just purely AI-generated content. If you think about the intent here is to deceive. So the intent isn't to make you think that there is that there's like a genuine, authentic human who's actually trying to leave these reviews. And this just wouldn't be possible if a single human tried to leave this number of comments in a day. And so here I'm just sharing like a little bit of a framework of how I think about this, and kind of how do we distinguish between authentic human content that is AI assisted versus the other side of kind of fraud, essentially. And so three questions I've been asking myself a lot recently is, one, who is the person who actually initially pushed the button? And so that is easy to answer these days because it's almost always a human. But I think in the future, as we get more and more AIs that actually talk to other AIs, I think that question is going to become more relevant. The next question is, what was there human oversight, right? So in the first example where I'm generating code using Copilot, there's always human oversight. You always have a human kind of initially write like the initial line of code that leads to the rest of the suggestion. And then you always have a human accept the code. So it's easy there. Whereas with the second example, there's not always human oversight if you have a bot that is now generating more than 10,000 comments. It's not clear whether a human is even capable of looking at all those comments, understanding what they mean, ensuring that they're all kind of intentionally nice. And so that leads to the final aspect, which is what is the intent? So with the first example, the intent is just to speed things up. Whereas with the second example, the intent is very much to fraud someone else, right? So you want to change opinion at scale in a way that you wouldn't be able to do if you were just a single human who was writing lots of comments. All right, so now that was kind of like a roundabout way of where I want to get to, which is, why are we even thinking about this like AI generated content versus human generated content question? And for us at Ribbon, one of the main reasons that we're thinking about this is because almost all of us at some point have been LinkedIn users. We've used LinkedIn a lot, received a lot of value either by finding jobs through it or hiring people through LinkedIn. But we've noticed that over the last few years, there has been a quality drop. And almost all the quality issues that you see on LinkedIn are essentially can be linked to this idea of fake accounts. So here I'm sharing an example. This is actually from LinkedIn themselves. If you focus on just the first half of 2022, over 20 million fake accounts were detected by them. And they also shared that themselves that this is growing almost 30% year on year. Now, what's interesting about this stat is that this is just the accounts that they found and deleted. And through their own admission as well, these accounts were amongst the most active accounts on LinkedIn. So if you create a fake bot account, you're actually very likely to make that like and comment and lots of other actions on your platform. Whereas the average LinkedIn user kind of creates an account and then will never do any other action. And so the chances are, if you're really active on LinkedIn, you actually have probably interacted with some kind of bot or fake account at some point. And so is this something that's unique to LinkedIn? I think it's not necessarily. So we see this kind of issue on lots of other platforms. So we just saw the example of Reddit. You also see this on Twitter. There's somewhat of a problem on Instagram, but I think there's a couple of factors that make this a little bit special on LinkedIn. So the first one is that lots of people use LinkedIn in a way that you can actually directly quantify in terms of value, right? So if you're an employer and you're hiring, you have a certain value that that employee is worth. I want I want to hire someone for this job. This is how much I would actually pay if I could find the right person instantly. And there's also people who use LinkedIn for sales, for example. And so similarly for them, if you're running a search for customers, you can usually quantify, yes, if I was to find a new customer right now on LinkedIn, this is how much they would be worth. And so that idea of kind of being able to quantify all of the value of a profile on LinkedIn, I think leads to a lot more fake profiles that have a worse impact as well, because people are then able to understand, okay, if this kind of fake profile is worth $100, I should then generate a bunch of these fake profiles, and I know exactly how much in terms of compute, effort, and in terms of time I should actually spend, because we know exactly how much that's worth, right? So I think that's really the top reason. But the other aspects of LinkedIn is that you have things like your experience, you have things like your accomplishments on there, but all of this is unverifiable, and it's also self-reported. And so that's usually not a problem on other platforms, because if you use Reddit, you're usually not really claiming much about yourself. In fact, you might even be anonymous. That's also true for Twitter. So an interesting aspect of LinkedIn is that there's lots of people making claims, but not really a lot of evidence for those claims. So here's another interesting example. If you go on LinkedIn and look up the number of Apple employees that are listed on LinkedIn, when I last checked, it was over 500,000. Now, what's interesting is if you actually go to Apple and ask them how many employees are there actually at Apple, the number is closer to, I think, 170,000 or maybe 200,000. So there's almost a delta of 400K there, and almost all these 400K people are essentially fake or lying. So they're actually not Apple employees. They have nothing to do with Apple, but they've either listed Apple on their LinkedIn as a joke, or they're lying. And what I find interesting about this actually is that there are a lot of cases where Apple has actually gone to LinkedIn and asked them to take down accounts, because Apple has the resources to do this. They have a large legal team, they have a large HR team. Not every company can do this, and so just to see the level and the scale of fraud that's actually happening here, I find really interesting, because it means that the average company has no hope, really. So here's another example of a fake profile. So this was actually created by someone who's famous on Twitter. Roshan Patel initially did this as a joke, and what he wanted to show is that if you add a bunch of prestigious names to your LinkedIn, you can then use that to DM other people. You can use that to find deals. You can use that to find investment. And so that there's this there is actually monetary gain here to be made if you lie on LinkedIn, and that's really at the heart of the problem. So I want to link this to kind of how do we solve this, right? Like what is Ribbon's role in this? So I think we can really address all of the aspects of this unverifiability, and it's really what we've been working on for the last year. So the aspects that we really want to solve in this like social professional network world is, one, we think that hiring right now is too slow. And so it's too slow if you're an applicant, and it's also too slow if you're a company, right? So if you're an applicant, what you really want to do is show off all of your skills, show off everything that you've achieved. You want to stand out from the crowd, and you want to be able to do that all as fast as possible. And one of the one of the kind of interesting aspects of LinkedIn is that they introduced Easy Apply. This was over a decade ago now that they initially added that. And at the time, it seemed like a really good idea. Let's let everyone kind of apply as easily as they can. But what that's resulted in is that if everyone is able to apply really easily, it's really hard for anyone to stand out. And then as a result of that, you actually see that most people, even if they initially hear about a job on LinkedIn, they end up using referrals and all sorts of other means to actually get that job. And so LinkedIn really becomes just an initial place to hear about a job, but not the fastest or the best way. So second, in terms of content, we have this really strong focus on real content, right? So we want to make sure that there's always a human attributable to all the content that you see on Ribbon. And in the long term, we think that that's going to lead to better discussions, more valuable information, and just overall a much healthier community. And then third, an aspect that we're actually tackling right now, we're about to launch next week, and would love to give anyone early access if they're interested in, is we actually modeled this off the YouTube creator program, and we're about to launch what we're calling Ribbon Earnings. And this is a program where, as you grow your network on Ribbon, we also want to reward you back. So we actually modeled this off YouTube, the way that they reward creators on their platform. So if you create a piece of content that's really valuable to the platform, let's say it's a video on YouTube, you end up getting a cut of the revenue on that platform. We also want to do the same, but for your network. So if you grow your network on Ribbon, invest in the platform early, you should also earn back from that. And so, yeah, how are we actually achieving these things? So on the faster hiring side, all experience and in the long term, really all info on your profile on Ribbon will be verified. So right now we have this concept of social verification of experience. So if you add, for example, like a past role that you've had, your last job on Ribbon, you can ask people who you work with to verify that. And we're already seeing that the employers love that feature because they know like exactly who to contact if they want more info. They can see the like level of trust. And if you increase the level of trust there, you end up with a faster and a more efficient hiring process. So in terms of real content, one of the things we rolled out recently is that not everyone can post on Ribbon. You have to have a minimum level of verification. And so this is linked to what I just said. What we want to do there is increase the trust. Not anyone can just post on Ribbon at the start. But if you go out and find other people who can verify you, add more trust to your Ribbon profile, then that unlocks posting. And what we've seen there is it just ends up in a better level of content for everyone. And then the third one I mentioned already, really excited about this, would love to give anyone early access if you're interested, and really excited to give back to the community through Ribbon Earnings. So just kind of an overview of like what we bring to the table in terms of Ribbon. So one of the things I'm really proud of is, and we hear this a lot from people, and one of our focuses is that we're really trying to build a cleaner profile. So less kind of busy, more focused on you and your accomplishments. We have no ads on Ribbon, and we never will have ads. We're really strict about spam. And so the whole kind of vibe that we're trying to build on Ribbon is a kind of calmer, cleaner place. One of the earliest features that we actually launched was this idea of proof of achievement. And so this is related to the trust aspect that I mentioned. We want to make it so that whenever you share your profile, wherever you share it, whether it's to an employer or to a contact, we want you to be able to prove all of your achievements. And so we have this concept of awards on Ribbon, which are issued from companies, and they effectively act as proof of achievement. And that all of that goes hand in hand with the verified experience. So that's another way to prove what you've achieved. And we also have profile videos, which is a really popular feature that we've heard kind of adds a bit of humanity to your profile. It is still really hard to fake videos as of today, and so it adds a bit more evidence that you are who you actually say you are. All right, I just want to finish off with a little picture of the team. I actually know that Anne is on this call as well right now. So she's here and on the call. And yeah, thank you for listening. Would really love to connect with any of you on or off Ribbon. I can share my email in the chat as well. And yeah, would love to open up the floor. And what I'm really interested in hearing is kind of whether any of you have been searching for a job kind of recently or are planning to. And yeah, we'd just love to hear about your experience so far there and ways that Ribbon could really help you in just making that whole process easier.
Arsham, I really love your presentation, and I believe you're tackling a problem that everyone is facing. But can I ask you, why did you go specifically, targeting, for example, like the LinkedIn platform, and why not going, for example, with, I don't know, it could be applied to anything. So, for example, why didn't you go with something like Twitter or even like dating apps? Dating apps are like, for example, very skeptical, and I think those are like the most like scams that you hear out there. There are even like serious about that. So I'm
Hmm.
just curious to see, why did you go specifically with LinkedIn?
Yeah, it's a really good question, actually. I think you're right that like there's a lot of impact, like you said, for example, in dating apps, especially when it comes to safety. I think like that's a really important issue. I think you could apply this to, for sure, the like dating app example that you mentioned. I think any social media network, I think, will eventually have to incorporate some level of verification, actually, because I think it is just getting too easy to fake content, and that's just a fundamental problem. Um, Really, the reason why we started here is because I think just in terms of world impact, this is the biggest place. So we hear over and over again that it's getting harder to find a job, and one of the reasons is because it's so easy to apply. So from an employer point of view, they're just inundated with lots of profiles and have no way of filtering through all the applications. And then from an applicant point of view, it's just hard to stand out from the crowd, right? Like how do, if you have achieved XYZ, how do you actually show to someone like these are real achievements? I'm not a fake profile. And so I think it's just in terms of impact, I think we can honestly make that whole application process not just twice better, I think 10x better. And really early days, I think even the types of verification that we've added right now are pretty simple. But yeah, just to answer your question directly, I think in terms of impact, this is easily the biggest place that this kind of technology can have impact on.
Appreciate it.
Um, I'm just coming into the workforce, off of like probably 8 years of not working, staying home with children. Is this going to be a good way for me to reach out to get back into growing my resume?
Right. Yeah. So I think one thing you'll find actually is we've really focused on the aspect of community as well, right? And I think it's important, um, when whether you're like searching for a job or you're thinking about it in the future, like whatever the circumstances is, I think it's always important not only to hear from like employers or like people who are hiring, but also from like other people in your situation, right? So I think one of the things that could help you is just actually joining the community and finding other people who are in a similar situation. As to having like a gap, if that's what you're alluding to. I think that's not an issue these days at all. And I think that's actually something like that. The idea of verification can help more easily prove the things that you have achieved in the past. So that kind of thing just doesn't matter.
Okay. And so that, I guess my question is, you said earlier that you'd have to have a minimum amount of background, like job wise. Would that slow me down on your platform to look for jobs?
No, so yes, sir. I should have explained that better. So let's say you have one single piece of experience. If you want to, for example, post content onto Ribbon, you have to have at least 5 people verify that. But that could be 5 people that you know right now who can vouch for that experience, and that also doesn't mean that you need 5 like different pieces of experience. So as long as you have one experience, whatever that is, that could be a degree, it could be education, it could be an internship, whatever it is. As long as you can find 5 people who can vouch for that, that should essentially unlock all the features on Ribbon for you.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you.
Oh, I think I saw a hand go up. Was it Cody? Code Man?
Yeah, I think I saw it too, but then it disappeared. I don't know where it went.
Okay, Anthony? Anthony Chapman? If you have a question, you can go ahead and ask it.
If your microphone isn't working, feel free to also, yeah, exactly. Add the question in the chat, and I can read it out. Yeah, so one of the comments here, I don't use LinkedIn. I think it's an extension of Facebook. I'd be really interested to hear from anyone, kind of like what do you love and also hate about LinkedIn? Like where are areas that you get like a lot of value? I'm particularly interested in content. Like for me, I'm not a huge fan of the content on LinkedIn, but I mean, there's a lot on there, so there must be people who find that interesting. Okay, I think we have a question. So with things like ID and email verifications becoming a way of proof, you now see that badge stating. Do you see this having a negative impact on Ribbon? Okay, yeah, it's an interesting question. So I see it actually as a really positive thing. I think more of these platforms are like waking up to the idea that you need to have some level of verification. I think where they're going a little bit wrong on this is that they're adding it either as like a premium subscription thing. So that's really the approach on Twitter, is like if you're a premium subscriber, you end up getting like a verified badge. Or some of these platforms like LinkedIn actually added ID verification. But the issue is so few people will actually go through that flow. And that's just because it's not really baked into the fabric of the platform, right? So they added it for LinkedIn. Like they've almost been around for 20 years now, and they only just added any concept of verification. And so I think there's no way that they could ever like weave that into all the different aspects. And I think you have to think about this from the very foundations of your platform if you want to make verification work. That's been one of our learnings at Ribbon, I would say, is that we actually want to weave the like benefits of verification into every aspect of our platform. And so if you're verified, that should give you better access to jobs. It should give you better access to content. Uh, you could earn more on Ribbon. There should be a lot of benefits. But I think adding it as an afterthought, I don't think will ever work. That's interesting. So Anthony Chapman wrote that you don't have access to your LinkedIn. That's interesting. You should just create a Ribbon profile, and hopefully you'll never need LinkedIn again.
Could you possibly create a new LinkedIn account with a different email, Anthony?
Arsham, I have a question,
Sure.
or more like a comment. What do you think? So you were saying that you're not a fan of like content creation on LinkedIn, right? Or like posts on LinkedIn. Um, I mean, how would you say you would stand out against like other people if you're not? Because I've seen like a lot of people that are like posting regularly, um, and then when you log in or when you go into their profiles, they have like 10,000 followers, and they already have a big database. So I'm assuming
Mhm.
when they lose their job or when they're trying to make a changing jobs, when they're like changing jobs, I would assume that if they would post something because of all the database or all the followers that they have created based on the content that they have posted, I would assume that it would be easier for them to look for another job, right?
Yeah. No, I think that's an interesting point. I think you are right. If you regularly post the kind of content that is really popular on LinkedIn, which is there's like a whole category for it, right? It's called LinkedIn cringe. And it's that kind of content you only really see on LinkedIn isn't super authentic. I think on LinkedIn that is exactly what works. That will get you followers. If you're ever laid off from your role, you will have more in your network, and so it's easier to find your next role on LinkedIn. um, if you do all of that, right? I think that's really actually the problem, though, right? Is that there's a set of incentives and early decisions that LinkedIn made, that I think ended up shooting themselves in the foot. And so, as a user, the only way to really succeed is to create that kind of content on LinkedIn that isn't authentic, that isn't actually super helpful for a lot of people. And so I think that's why you see, like, this is just one example. If you're ever interested in learning about the machine learning community, there's almost no activity on LinkedIn. I've never seen a genuinely useful AI or machine learning post that was originally from LinkedIn. It usually happens either on Twitter or Reddit, and then it will get reposted on LinkedIn. And so I think it's interesting that you don't get a lot of like the good original content that originates from there, but you get a lot of activity as a result of reposting. I think it'll always be like that there, and it's just something that we're trying to avoid. Is you should be able to actually post like authentic, genuine content or interesting things that like other people can learn from, and that's what the algorithm should actually prioritize, right? Not this kind of inauthentic clickbait. All right. Were there any other questions or any comments about, especially on the job side, anything that you would love to see uh, improved in the job search? All right, cool. Sounds like we can wrap it up there. Thanks a lot for having me, everyone. It was nice to meet you all, and yeah, feel free to send me an email. I'll add my email again here. Would honestly love to connect with any and all of you. If you have any other thoughts that you haven't shared, and would also love to connect with all of you on Ribbon itself too. So please sign up, and I'll follow you once you do.
Sounds great. I actually want to sign up, so I'll be following you, Arsham. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, thanks a lot. Have a great evening, everyone.
You too.
See you.